You're watching Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. I'm doing this because I am under close contact from my other colleagues who are confirmed positive. But that's the life in an era of post-pandemic or an endemic situation. But the show must go on. And joining us for today is Ernest Chew, the CFO of Carro. Very recently, MyTukar has launched their retail experience center to allow for retailers, people like you and me, customers, to enjoy the ability to own a car without actually purchasing it. So there's a lot of ways to dissect this. So maybe Ernest, you can talk to us about the event that took place on the 7th of January. What was taking place and how should customers see that opportunity?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me on your show. I'll say that we are in the journey of making the purchasing of used car seamless, hassle-free, digital, and transparent, essentially. So this is not new for us. We've always been wanting to do this. Today we launched our retail center, and we want to tell the consumers that there is a better way to buy used car. There's a trusted way to buy used car, and frankly, you can do this entirely online. Um,
Uh,
the
okay, so how is that retail experience translatable? Maybe you can share with us the journey.
so what we so of course we have the showroom here. I think the showroom here is to give trust to the consumer that we are real. Uh, if there's any issues, you can come to us. You can pick up the car from us. But I think what we really want to try and educate the consumer is you can go online, browse our inventory, book it, finance it, have the car delivered to you. Or if you just want to have that little bit of peace of mind and kick the tire and drop by the showroom, we are here. We are here.
How integral is the ability to see and touch and feel the vehicle outright as opposed to doing everything online? Do you think that this is integral for the customer journey to go through and actually feel it? In the case of customers, can you perhaps give some percentages or I guess fraction of how many people would prefer a fully online experience versus some customers that want a little bit of both, the ease of everything doing online, but at the same time, as you say just now, kick the tires.
Yeah. So I think the traditional way of buying cars still exists. People like to feel, kick the tire. That is something we cannot change overnight. We can only educate the consumers at this point in time that this is entirely safe. This is transparent, and you would have excellent customer experience despite it being done entirely online. In terms of percentage, I don't have for last month, for instance, but I can tell you during the MCO when we were doing retail, it was entirely 100% online sales. There were no physical visits to our showroom. Um, we deliver the cars to them, and we've shown that it works. So, underpinning this online purchasing experience, we tell the customer you have a 5-day money back guarantee. You buy it, your spouse don't like it, you don't like it, your kids don't like the seat is leather, you don't like leather, you can return it, no questions asked. We provide a extended warranty. Typically it's 1 year, but during the auto fair we are extending it by another 1 year, so it's 2 year. And on top of that, we throw in a 2-year free service. Um,
How
all
is the interrelatability between Carro and MyTukar? Who owns what?
So we are an investor in MyTukar. Essentially, we are the same. Um, from a Carro standpoint, we support MyTukar across everything that they need to do. So the tech, I'll say not just support. I think it's a wholehearted collaboration. We are all part of the same group. We could have rebranded, MyTukar as Carro or so, but we decided that true and true, MyTukar is a Malaysian company. We wanted to keep that Malaysian identity. We hired, or MyTukar hired, I think today 1,000 people, and frankly, very Malaysian.
Let's talk a little bit more about the differences or the salient differences between MyTukar versus your competitors out there. It's not really a straightforward used car kind of experience. You can also do it leasing, and of course, long-term lease or short-term. Do you think that these kind of differences would be appreciated by customers out there?
I think there are certain segment of the market who prefers leasing, and for us, we do leasing too. We have it in Singapore. Leasing to us is an extension of financing of sorts. So if you think of financing, maybe you get 80-90% LTV. Leasing is 100% LTV. You put a down payment, you pay on a monthly basis. Towards the end of it, you either decide you want to own it or you don't want to own it. And whereas for a car, as I said, you put it's 80-90% LTV. It's 7 to 9 years. It's a lifestyle. I think the leasing side of things impacts lifestyle. Going forward, I see a segment of customers who prefer a subscription type uh, mobility solution as compared to an
Okay,
outright purchase.
that's the point I want to harp on. Mobility type lifestyle solution. But we have to go for a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more on that point. We'll be right back after these messages. Thanks for staying on with us. I have with me Carro on the line with us, talking about their Auto Day that took place on the 7th of January. We are trying to unravel not just the business of MyTukar and Carro, but of course, perhaps trying to see where the direction is when it comes to vehicle ownership or vehicle utilization. One item that we need to think about or need to speak about is that mobility style lifestyle subscription service that might dominate the way how we own cars in the future, or pseudo own, I suppose. Ernest, maybe you can talk to us through this whole changing of consumer behavior towards car ownership. The industry itself is also quite interesting, but I'm pretty sure that there are some hesitancy in terms of trust from the consumer. Or do you think that's mostly arrested or addressed right now?
Um, on subscription, I'll say it's nascent at this point in time. Um, I think the consumer still today, by and large, still prefers outright car ownership. Doesn't mean that subscription will never work. So, for instance, we run a very successful subscription business in Singapore. Now, the experience was that they can subscribe for the car for 6 months or so, and then decides towards the end of it to return the car. I think for consumer, the hesitancy to buy a car outright um, oftentimes resides in the fact that purchasing outright is a 7 to 9 year financial commitment. And if I've got a job that is not so stable, um, I'm at a phase of life where, frankly, I'm a brand new car owner. I don't know yet whether I want to buy a car or not. Then this actually works for that segment of customers. The other thing I'll say as well is sometimes a subscription based model could be a lifestyle uh, behavior. So what I mean by that is, if you're someone who likes changing cars, and you feel that purchasing outright, selling outright in 2-3 years, or frankly even a couple of months or a year, you don't want that hassle of doing that, then subscription could work.
Ernest, let's talk a little bit more about some car manufacturers that are already doing this in a way, I suppose, shorter term tenure, ability for them to provide good or easy finance. I wouldn't say easy, but attractive financing. Some manufacturers come to mind include Mercedes with the agility financing, BMW with their balloon financing, Toyota and Honda also to some degree also has some kind of financing. Specifically, these are brand new cars. New, bringing it to used cars, right? Do you think that this would actually open up more opportunities for consumers to enjoy the kind of privileges and use or space in terms of the customers wanting used cars is a little bit better now compared to before, basically opening up more opportunities for them to own cars to with lesser risk.
I totally agree. I think it's not so much of a risk. I think it's more of a preference. Now, I think the Mercedes Benz and the BMW of the world has done well with those programs. Um, could those work for used cars? I think it can work. We are in the midst of thinking through how that could work uh, for the Malaysian bread and butter cars. Why? Because for a BMW and Mercedes, they are expensive. To own those, it is a huge financial commitment. Um, and to then be able to finance those are incredibly expensive things. So if you think about something like a Proton, would a typical financing from the banks work for them? It can, but for someone who what the agility of the world does is it's a 3-year program. It's designed specifically so that customer at the end of the 3-year program can choose to keep the car, upgrade, or change. So there's a period of time where they can then decide what to do with it. For the bread and butter car, I think we can do it. We just need to find the right way. At the heart of it is residual value. How to price that residual value into that product, and someone to take away some of that risk from a financial counterparty standpoint.
Also, when you think about the mass market car option, we're talking a lot of numbers here. We're talking in terms of the quantity per car. Don't you think that it would be a great value add for a business like yours to try to automate some parts of it, particularly in terms of the calculation of residual value, perhaps even include some elements of machine learning into it, particularly if you can integrate driver behavior or some form of analytics, this would actually improve on the efficiency of how you evaluate the residual value of the vehicle versus the kind of risk assessment associated to that particular buyer. Is this the next wave of you doing things, at least here in Malaysia?
Yeah. So we are already doing some of these things. It's at the heart of what we do, to be honest. Um, we trade cars as a starting point. We trade cars day in, day out, every day, every week, every month. We have a big data of transacted price. We could, in theory, plot out the residual value curve of any car that trades regularly on our platform. So that's a huge competitive advantage. The second part of it is we are an ecosystem play. We do financing. So one part of financing is how do we plot that residual value curve and ensure when we finance a car, we generally can be when we dispose this car, we would be able to cover the financing. That's the second part. And the third part is as we monitor this car through that vehicle ownership life cycle, we have after sales, we have workshop. Every touch point on that car gives us invaluable data to help us assess the quality of these cars within the ecosystem. And then the last thing is insurance. So in Singapore, for instance, we have a usage-based insurance where if a consumer drive, the consumer would pay based on how much they drive. Um, Sounds very straightforward. The consumer will be rewarded for driving less. In other parts of ASEAN, we partnered with MSIG, who is our investor, and we are working with them on behavior-based insurance. What that means is how you drive affects the premium you should pay. If you're a safe driver, why should you be paying a lot more? Um, we are working with them. We've kind of tried that out in Indonesia. We have been in discussion with partners in Malaysia, so stay tuned. All I'll say is there is a lot of information from the purchase of car to financing to how regularly you service the car, um, where you service the car, and the insurance, how you drive, the behavior you drive. Then completing that circle, when you sell it back to us, in an ideal world, we don't even need to look at that car. We already know, okay, this is a 5-year-old car. It's been driven X amount of kilometer. The way it's been driven is like what? There's no accident. We can immediately price this car and say, hey, Mr. Ibrahim, I know what the value of the car. Today the market is good. Do you want to transact today? Tomorrow you will have your cash.
That'll be the ideal situation. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of steps in between. But one more short break before continue our conversation with Ernest Chew of Carro. We'll be right back after these messages. Thanks for staying on with us. On the line is Ernest Chew, the CFO of Carro. Ernest, I really want to talk more about the technology behind this because it really does touch on the issue of privacy. It's always a trade-off, right? I mean, I want to pay the lowest insurance possible, the premium, but at the same time, I don't want you to look into how I drive, how I behave, and at some point in time, I'm willing to forego my privacy for lower premium. But there are discerning customers. I would like to argue that I'm one of them, where I'd rather just pay that whole premium fee as long as you don't need to look at how I drive and whether or not I'm a safe driver or otherwise. There has to be a world where I get the best of both worlds, don't you think? Where, as long as I don't get into trouble, I get to pay low premiums, but at the same time, you don't have to really see how I drive. Do you think that utopian world exists, at least in my world, Ernest?
I think in reality, I think people are rightly so nervous about privacy, but the reality is, uh, I think most who offer usage-based insurance will respect their privacy. There's no way we would be able to really look at how you drive. It goes through an analysis, a machine that analyzes the way you drive, the how you attempt curves, the brakes, the acceleration, even to the point how frequent you touch your phone when you drive. Um, there's also tracking devices, let's say in China, where it's extremely popular. But the way consumer like it and the way it's been packaged is it's a value add service where if this car goes missing, there's a way to track where the car is, and that is all that reduces the premium of the insurance. Like it or not, if you want a better and a lower premium, there's some trade-offs, but I'll say sometimes there's more benefits than actually downsides. I I'll give you an example. Let's say you've got your Apple iPhone. Um, there's this tracing uh, capability if you lose your phone. Now, you would probably not use it that much, but if you lose it, you'll realize that actually how useful that is. And people never really thought about, okay, am I being tracked on my iPhone everywhere I walk?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. But at the same time, I honestly can't live without my phone. But at the same time, I don't want iPhone. I don't want anybody to know where I've been. That's the whole point. But yes, like I said, there are trade-offs, and as you rightfully pointed out, there will be benefits that will outweigh, I guess, the con of the whole thing. And of course, we all want to be paying lesser at the expense of the trade-offs that we mentioned earlier. But that's the insurance bit. I just want to touch, before we end this conversation, I want to touch a little bit more on consumer behavior and how this relates to MyTukar. Do you feel that the consumers are ready to re-enter the economy yet again? Cases are indeed spiking. Omicron, for instance, is indeed spiraling out of control in some parts of the world. And in Malaysia, when we have foreign travelers coming back home, they are also bringing in the variant. I don't know whether this endemic situation is going to work. Probably will go into another lockdown, probably not. This level of uncertainty, I'm sure it impacts your business. Talk to us through it into how you're going to navigate this 2022 business environment.
Yeah, no, very, very good question. So when this first happened during the first MCO in Malaysia, we shelved all our growth plans. We became a lot more conservative. And we came out from the MCO, frankly, very surprised by the amount of activity in the used car space. I think there are a couple of reasons, and I go through some of those. First, people who were thinking about buying a new car suddenly realized that from an economic standpoint, if I don't have a job, secured job, I may not know where is my job going to be by the end of this year. I don't want to splash out too much on a brand new car. Let's say I was originally going for a Proton brand new, but could I live with a Proton which is 1 or 2 years old, uh, and I save a lot in between? It became a very, very viable option. Part two, the supply chain was broken uh, during the pandemic. New cars can't get to ports, the ships can't transport cars, and you throw in this semiconductor shortage mix. If you're looking to buy a car and being told that you need to wait for 3 months to 6 months to get your hand onto this car, and you need this car tomorrow, guess what? You would buy a used car. Um, the other thing that has happened, and I want to link in MyTukar here, is we've made the entire purchasing experience very transparent, very seamless, hassle free. And if we throw in all these warranties, hey, you have actually peace of mind, really, buying used cars. In the past, uh, there are black sheeps in the industry where they sell cars that are have gone through an accident. They are lemons, and I can understand why people feel that the entire experience hasn't been great. But with us being around, I think the consumer are now starting to think about used car being an extremely viable proposition for transportation. I think also
I,
the sorry, go on.
sorry. Go on.
I also think that the used car currently is relatively underpenetrated. In the mature markets, we are talking about one for every new car, there's 2 to 3 used cars transaction. I think in Malaysia we are still below one in that sense. Um, Really, there was a lot of industry pain points, not just for the consumers, dealers themselves too. So when we came in, we basically tell everyone that we are here to improve the entire automotive industry, be it a dealer, be it the consumer. We become the platform that instills a lot more trust in the used car space. And last year and the year before, used cars has gone up tremendously. And I think it's because of people like ourselves. We make things super simple, super transparent, and hassle free.
All right. Ernest, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. All the best to your businesses. And perhaps we can look at the expansion plans very closely in the near term and perhaps talk about that as well in the next time we meet. That was Ernest Chew, the CFO of Carro. If you've missed any part of this interview, just head on to astroawani.com. Look for Notepad over there. You can also look for MyTukar on all our social sites. Till then, thanks very much for watching and goodbye.